arrogant classmates invited the quiet girl they once called class dummy to their 10-year reunion just to mock her. Serena Johnson, the shy black student they remembered sitting alone at lunch, walked through those doors in a simple blue dress and modest heels. Whispers erupted. Tiffany smirked. Kevin bragged about his non-existent success, and Ashley even posted cruel jokes on social media, assuming Serena would never amount to anything. Everyone thought the entertainment was set. But when Serena stepped forward, calm and composed, the room went silent. The same nobody they tormented revealed a truth that wiped every condescending smile off their faces and left her former bullies choking on their own assumptions. Before we dive into this incredible story of transformation and triumph, if you're new to our channel, hit that subscribe button. Your support fuels these powerful stories that remind us all that success isn't always what it seems. Stay until the very end because this story will leave you speechless. And when it does, share your thoughts in the comments and pass this story along to someone who needs to hear it. Now let's see what happens when the underestimated become unstoppable.
Serena Johnson was used to silence. It was the silence she carried when she walked into school every morning, head down, as if the weight of invisibility pressed on her shoulders. It was the silence she wore like armor when the whispers rose behind her, when the snickers rolled through the hallways, when Tiffany Blake's sharp, cruel laughter echoed against the lockers. Being the only black girl in a suburban high school wasn't easy. Her classmates didn't say it outright, not in words the teachers would catch, but the message was clear. She was different, wrong, a curiosity at best, a target at worst. She heard it in the way Tiffany exaggerated her accent, even though Serena had no accent to begin with, the way Brad muttered "charity case" whenever she passed in her secondhand sneakers, the way boys in Letterman jackets whispered "dummy" and laughed as though she couldn't hear. But she heard everything. Serena never fought back. She wasn't built for loudness, and besides, what would be the point? If she shouted, they'd laugh louder. If she cried, they'd only be satisfied. So she stayed quiet, watching, listening, holding her words close like treasure. Her notebooks became her world, margins filled with sketches, diagrams, numbers, and the beginnings of ideas that even she didn't fully understand yet. She taught herself coding on an ancient laptop her mother bought at a thrift store. When the Wi-Fi in their tiny apartment cut out, she wrote code on paper, line by line, until she could test it at school. There were rare respites. Jana Parker, a girl with a soft smile and quiet courage, sometimes sat with her at lunch. Jana didn't care that sitting with Serena meant the others rolled their eyes. She talked about books, about her dreams of becoming a writer, about anything that didn't sting. Serena cherished those moments, though she rarely said much back. It was enough to feel seen. Graduation came in 2010. Tiffany shone in her valedictorian speech, Brad flexed in his cap and gown, and Serena walked across the stage unnoticed, her name mispronounced by the principal. No applause, no cheers. Just a quick handshake and a scroll of paper that seemed both meaningless and sacred. But Serena wasn't empty. She walked off that stage with something none of them could see, a plan. She packed her life into 2 bags, hugged her mother tight, and left. 10 years blurred past in motion. Nights without sleep, days spent grinding, sacrifices stacked on sacrifices. She built, failed, learned, and built again. And the world finally saw her. The world saw the brilliance her classmates had been too blind, too cruel to recognize. Serena sat in her glass-walled office overlooking Silicon Valley, the autumn sun casting golden light across her mahogany desk. At 38 floors above ground, the sounds of traffic below seemed like whispers from another world. Her company, Quantum Sync Technologies, had just closed the largest AI acquisition deal in history. The financial magazines would run the numbers tomorrow. Serena Johnson, net worth $350 billion. The most powerful woman in tech. Maybe the most powerful person, period. Her assistant knocked. "Ms. Johnson, your 3 p.m. is here. Send them in." But as the door closed, her phone buzzed. A Facebook notification. She rarely checked social media anymore, but something made her glance at the screen. Tiffany Blake Morrison posted in Westfield High Class of 2010. Her throat tightened. With trembling fingers, she opened the app and clicked the notification. The post wasn't just a reunion announcement. It was Tiffany, now perfectly polished in her profile photo, addressing their entire graduating class. "Hey everyone! 10-year reunion planning is underway. Can't wait to see how everyone turned out. Some of us stayed local, some moved away, and some probably didn't make it very far at all. LOL. Anyway, mark your calendars for December 12th. $150 per ticket. Hope to see most of you there." But it was the comments that made Serena's blood freeze. Brad Murphy. "Wonder if Serena Johnson will show up LMAO. Remember how she used to sit alone at lunch? Poor girl probably ended up exactly where we thought she would." Ashley Rodriguez. "OMG yes. The quiet one who never spoke. I always wondered what happened to her. Probably still living in that tiny apartment with her mom." Kevin Torres. "Wasn't she the one Tiff used to call the class dummy? She was so awkward. Bet she's working some dead-end job somewhere." Tiffany Blake Morrison. Now, let's be nice. I'm sure she's doing something with her life." Serena stared at the screen, her hands shaking with rage. Here they were, 10 years later, still laughing at her expense. Still treating her like she was nothing. The girl who had just closed a deal worth more than their entire hometown's GDP was watching her former classmates mock her on social media, completely unaware that she could buy their lives 1,000 times over. The phone slipped from her hands, clattering onto the desk. As she reached for the phone, she knocked over a framed photo. It shattered, revealing something hidden behind it, a folded piece of paper she'd forgotten was there. Her mother's last note before she died 3 years ago. "Baby, you survived their worst. Now show them your best. Make them remember your name." Serena picked up the note, her tears transforming into something harder. Something fiercer. She stared at the phone screen, watching as more comments trickled in from her former classmates. Each laugh emoji felt like a slap. Each cruel assumption about her life burned deeper. But she didn't type anything back. Instead, she closed the app and made a decision that would change everything. She wouldn't dignify their mockery with a response. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of knowing they'd gotten under her skin. She would simply show up and let them discover for themselves exactly who they had been tormenting all those years. The silence in Serena's office stretched for what felt like hours after she closed the Facebook app. Outside her floor-to-ceiling windows, Silicon Valley hummed with the energy of 1,000 dreams being built and broken. But inside her sanctuary 38 floors above the world, Serena Johnson sat perfectly still, her mother's note trembling in her hands. She read the words again. "Baby, you survived their worst. Now show them your best. Make them remember your name." Her mother had written this 3 years ago, during her final weeks in the hospital. Cancer had stolen her voice, but not her wisdom. She'd pressed this note into Serena's palm the night before she died, whispering, "Keep this for when you need to remember who you are." Serena had forgotten about the note until today. Until the universe decided she needed to see it again. She picked up her phone and scrolled back through the Facebook comments. Each word cut deeper the second time. Poor girl probably ended up exactly where we thought she would. Probably still living in that tiny apartment with her mom. Bet she's working some dead-end job somewhere. A bitter laugh escaped her lips. If only they knew she owned the building where half of them probably worked. If only they knew she donated more money to charity last month than their entire graduating class would make in their lifetimes combined. But they didn't know. And that was about to change. Serena pressed her intercom. "Rebecca, cancel my meetings for the rest of the week." Her assistant's voice crackled back, surprised. "The rest of the week?" "But Ms. Johnson, you have the Google merger discussion tomorrow and the Senate hearing on Thursday. Reschedule everything. I have something more important to attend to." For the first time in her career, Serena Johnson was putting the past before the future. She spent the next hour making calls. First to her stylist in Beverly Hills. "I need something special, Marcus. Something that says power but doesn't scream money. Can you be here by 6? For you, darling. I'll be there by 5. Next, she called her driver. "Cancel my usual routes this week. We're taking a trip." Then came the hardest call. She dialed a number she hadn't used in 2 years. "Thompson Security Services. This is Derek." "Derek, it's Serena Johnson. I need a background check on about 50 people. High school classmates. I'll send you the list." "Ms. Johnson." Derek's voice shifted to professional alertness. He'd handled her security for years. Knew she never asked for personal favors. "Is there a threat we should know about?" "No threat. Just curiosity. I want to know where they all ended up. Jobs, marriages, financial situations, everything." "How deep do you want me to go?" Serena stared out at the city lights beginning to twinkle as evening approached. "Deep enough to know exactly who I'm dealing with." As Derek began running the background checks, the first report that came back stunned Serena. Jana Parker, the only classmate who had been kind to her, wasn't just struggling as an unknown writer like Serena expected. Jana had become a best-selling novelist under a pen name, with over 30 million books sold worldwide. But more shocking was why she'd hidden her success. She'd been secretly funding a scholarship program for underprivileged black students at their old high school for the past 5 years. Serena stared at Jana's file, remembering the quiet girl who used to sit with her at lunch. All these years, she'd assumed Jana had faded into obscurity while she'd risen to power. But Jana had been fighting the same fight from a different battlefield. Her phone rang. Marcus, her stylist, was downstairs. 20 minutes later, her penthouse became a war room. Marcus spread fabric samples across her dining table while his assistant set up a portable mirror. "Tell me the vibe you're going for, darling. I want them to know I won." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Revenge chic. I like it. But subtle revenge, yes? We're not trying to look like we're compensating." "Exactly." As Marcus worked, measuring and pinning, Serena's mind wandered to the reunion. December 12th. Less than 2 months away. She could already picture Tiffany's face when she walked through those doors. The shock. The disbelief. The slow, dawning realization that they'd spent 10 years mocking someone who could end their careers with a single phone call. But as satisfying as that image was, something else tugged at her thoughts. Jana's file sat on her coffee table, a reminder that not everyone from her past was an enemy. Maybe the reunion would bring more than just closure with her tormentors. The next morning brought devastating news. Derek's full report revealed something that shattered Serena's assumptions about the past. Brad Murphy, her cruelest tormentor, hadn't become the successful jock everyone expected. He'd been paralyzed in a car accident during his sophomore year of college, ending his football dreams. He now worked part-time as a youth counselor, specifically helping kids who were being bullied. The Facebook comments mocking her weren't coming from a place of success and superiority. They were coming from someone still trying to feel powerful about something, anything from his past. The revelation hit Serena like a physical blow. She'd spent 10 years building an empire partly fueled by the desire to prove Brad wrong, only to discover that life had already humbled him in ways she never could. But Derek's report had saved the most shocking revelation for last. There was one classmate who'd been conspicuously absent from the Facebook group Mockery. Connor Walsh, a quiet boy who'd sat 2 seats behind her in calculus, had become a teacher at their old high school. But according to Derek's sources, Connor had been asking about Serena for years. He'd even tried to find her on social media multiple times, not to mock her, but because he'd apparently told colleagues that he'd witnessed her brilliance firsthand and always wondered what happened to the smartest person in their graduating class. The file included a recent interview Connor had given to the school newspaper about his teaching philosophy. "I learned something important from a classmate in high school. Sometimes the quietest students are the ones with the most to say. I make sure none of my students suffer in silence the way some of my classmates did." Serena's hands shook as she read those words. Connor had been thinking about her, not with mockery or pity, but with respect. With regret. She closed the file and made another decision. This reunion wasn't just about facing her bullies anymore. It was about discovering who she'd really been sharing those hallways with all those years ago. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Darling, the dress is perfection. You're going to stop every heart in that room." Serena smiled, but it wasn't the cold smile of revenge she'd worn earlier. It was something warmer, something that felt suspiciously like hope. She opened her laptop and, for the first time in days, checked her emails. Buried in her inbox was something that made her pause. A message from the Westfield High School administration, sent to all notable alumni. "As we prepare for various class reunions this year, we'd love to feature successful graduates in our newsletter. If you'd like to share your post-graduation journey with current students, please contact our alumni coordinator." Serena stared at the message, then at Derek's files scattered across her table. Stories of struggle, success, failure, and redemption from classmates she'd barely known. Maybe it was time they all shared their real stories. Serena sat in the back of her black Tesla Model S, parked 3 blocks away from the Riverside Country Club. Through the tinted windows, she could see her former classmates arriving. Designer dresses, rental tuxedos, nervous laughter carrying across the winter air. They looked older, softer around the edges, but she recognized the walk, the gestures, the way they clustered in the same social groups that had defined their teenage years. "You sure you want to do this, Ms. Johnson?" Her driver, Miguel, glanced at her through the rearview mirror. He'd been with her for 4 years, had seen her handle hostile takeovers and congressional hearings without breaking a sweat. But tonight, her hands shook. "I'm sure." The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. She'd spent the past 2 months preparing for this moment. The background checks had revealed more surprises. Ashley Rodriguez, who'd wondered if Serena still lived in her mother's apartment, was drowning in student loan debt from a law degree she'd never used. Kevin Torres, who'd mocked her intelligence, had been fired from 3 jobs for incompetence. Only Tiffany had landed exactly where everyone expected. Married to a hedge fund manager, living in a McMansion, organizing charity galas for tax write-offs. But it was the others that haunted her thoughts. Jana with her secret success and quiet activism. Connor with his protective instincts and lingering guilt. Even Brad, broken and humbled, trying to heal other kids from his wheelchair. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jana Parker. "Hey stranger, heard through the grapevine you might be coming tonight. Would love to catch up if you make it. Table 12 if you want to find me." Serena stared at the message. Jana had reached out personally, bypassing the group chat entirely. No mockery, no assumptions. Just kindness, the same quality that had made her bearable company during those brutal high school lunches. Another text, this one from an unknown number. "Serena, this is Connor Walsh. I got your number from the class directory. I know we didn't talk much in school, But I always regretted that. I hope you're doing well. Looking forward to seeing you tonight if you decide to come." Her throat tightened. He'd been thinking about her. Wondering. Regretting. "Miguel, let's go." The Tesla glided through the country club gates. Valets in crisp white shirts rushed to open doors for BMWs and Audis, cars that cost more than most people's annual salaries. But when Serena's Tesla pulled up, followed by a second black car carrying her security detail, the valets paused. The car was understated, elegant. The woman who stepped out was breathtaking. Marcus had outdone himself. The midnight blue dress hugged her curves perfectly, sophisticated without being flashy. Her natural hair was styled in an elegant crown of curls, and the only jewelry she wore were diamond earrings that caught the light like stars. She looked successful, but not ostentatiously wealthy. She looked like someone who belonged in boardrooms and penthouses, but her classmates wouldn't immediately realize just how many she owned. As Serena approached the entrance, she nearly collided with a man in a wheelchair struggling with the heavy glass doors. Without thinking, she rushed forward to help, only to freeze when she looked down. It was Brad Murphy, her tormentor. The boy who'd called her charity case now needed help himself. Brad looked up, and their eyes met. Recognition flickered across his face, followed by something she'd never seen from him before: shame. "Serena." His voice was barely a whisper. "Serena Johnson?" She could have walked past, could have let him struggle with the doors the way he'd made her struggle with everything else. Instead, she held the door open and waited. "Thank you," he said quietly as he rolled past. "And Serena, I owe you an apology. Actually, I owe you about 1,000 apologies." She didn't respond, but she didn't walk away either. They entered the reunion together, the former bully and his victim, both changed by time in ways neither had expected. The Riverside Country Club's main ballroom had been transformed with twinkling lights and class photos blown up to poster size. A DJ played hits from 2008 to 2010, and a cash bar served overpriced cocktails to people trying to recapture their youth. Name tags bore senior yearbook photos, making everyone look like ghosts of their former selves. Conversations stopped as Serena entered, not because they recognized her success, but because they recognized her face. Whispers rippled through the crowd like dominoes falling. "Is that really Serena Johnson? She looks amazing. I thought she wasn't coming. Where did she get that dress?" Tiffany Blake Morrison spotted her first. Even across the crowded room, Serena could see the moment recognition hit. Tiffany's champagne flute froze halfway to her lips, her perfectly made-up face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and something darker: calculation. Tiffany excused herself from her conversation and began walking toward Serena, her heels clicking against the marble floor like a countdown timer. Other classmates turned to watch, sensing drama in the air. This was the moment they'd all been waiting for without realizing it. The reunion's first real confrontation. "Well, well," Tiffany's voice carried across the suddenly quiet space around them. "Look who decided to grace us with her presence after all." Her smile was razor-sharp, the same weapon she'd wielded in high school. "Serena Johnson, as I live and breathe. You look." She paused, taking in the expensive dress, the confident posture, the way Serena now stood eye to eye with her instead of shrinking away. Different. "Hello, Tiffany." Serena's voice was steady, professional. The voice of someone used to commanding attention in rooms full of powerful people. "I have to admit, I'm surprised you came. After that little Facebook discussion, I thought you might be too embarrassed." Tiffany's laugh tinkled like broken glass. "Though I suppose everyone deserves a chance to show how far they've come. So tell us, Serena, what have you been up to these past 10 years? Still living in that little apartment?" Did you ever figure out what you wanted to be when you grew up? The crowd had formed a loose circle around them now, phones discreetly raised to capture whatever drama was about to unfold. Serena could feel their hungry attention, the same energy that had fed their cruelty in high school. Before Serena could respond, Connor Walsh appeared beside her. He'd grown taller, broader, his boyish face now angular and mature. But his eyes held the same quiet intelligence she remembered from calculus class. "Actually," Connor said, his voice cutting through Tiffany's smugness, "I can answer that question." He looked directly at Serena, and she saw something in his expression that took her breath away. Recognition. Not just of her face, but of who she'd always been underneath the pain. "This is Serena Johnson," he continued, addressing the crowd but never taking his eyes off her. "She was the smartest person in our graduating class. Probably the smartest person I've ever met. And I've spent the last 10 years wondering what incredible things she's accomplished, because I knew from the moment I watched her solve calculus problems that the rest of us couldn't even understand that she was destined for greatness." The crowd murmured, confused. This wasn't the narrative they remembered. This wasn't the story they'd been telling themselves about the quiet girl who'd sat alone. Tiffany's smile faltered. "Connor, that's sweet, but—" "She tutored me," Connor continued, his voice growing stronger. "Senior year, when I was failing calculus and thought I wouldn't graduate. She stayed after school for weeks, teaching me concepts I couldn't grasp. She never asked for anything in return. She just helped because she could." Serena stared at him. She remembered those tutoring sessions, but she'd assumed he'd forgotten. They'd barely spoken during them, just worked through problems together in companionable silence. She'd thought it meant nothing to him. "And when Jessica Palmer was spreading rumors about you," Connor said, his eyes still locked on hers, "I should have stood up for you. I knew they were lies. I knew you were brilliant and kind and strong. But I was 17 and stupid and scared of not fitting in. That's been my biggest regret for 10 years." The ballroom had gone completely quiet. Even the DJ seemed to sense the moment, letting the current song fade without starting another. Serena felt something crack open in her chest. Not breaking, but opening. Like a door she'd kept locked for a decade, finally getting some light. "Connor," she said softly, and her voice carried in the silence, "I remember those tutoring sessions. You were one of the few people who ever listened to me. Really listened." Tiffany looked between them, her control of the narrative slipping away. "This is all very touching," she said, forcing another laugh. "But let's be honest about—" "Actually," Serena interrupted, her voice still quiet but now carrying absolute authority, "let's be honest about everything." She turned to face the crowd, all her former classmates watching with rapt attention. The moment she'd been preparing for had arrived. But looking at Connor's encouraging smile, at Jana waving from across the room, even at Brad watching hopefully from his wheelchair, she realized this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about truth. The silence in the Riverside Country Club ballroom stretched like a held breath. Serena stood at the center of a circle of her former classmates, their faces reflecting curiosity, skepticism, and in Tiffany's case, barely concealed irritation. Connor remained beside her, his presence steady and reassuring. "The truth is," Serena began, her voice carrying the quiet authority she'd developed in boardrooms across the world, "high school was the hardest period of my life. Not because of the academics, which came easily, but because of the loneliness. The daily reminder that I was different, unwanted, invisible." She looked around the circle, meeting eyes that had once refused to see her. "But it was also the most important period of my life, because it taught me something crucial about resilience." Ashley Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably. "Serena, we were all just kids. You can't hold grudges forever." "I'm not here to hold grudges," Serena replied calmly. "I'm here to share what I learned." Kevin Torres laughed nervously. Come on, we all struggled after graduation. It's not like any of us became millionaires or anything. The irony of his words hung in the air. Several classmates chuckled, not understanding why Serena's expression had shifted to something almost amused. You're right, Kevin. Most people don't become millionaires. She paused, choosing her words carefully. I didn't either. Tiffany's smile returned, sharp and triumphant. See, we've all had to adjust our expectations. Life isn't a fairy tale. You're absolutely right, Tiffany. Life isn't a fairy tale. Serena's voice remained steady. It's much more interesting than that. From across the room, Jana Parker had been watching the confrontation with growing concern. She approached the circle, her best-selling novelist's instinct for drama telling her this moment was building to something significant. Maybe we should all just enjoy the evening, Jana suggested diplomatically. We're here to reconnect, not relitigate high school. Actually, Connor said, his teacher's voice cutting through the murmurs, I think Serena has something important to say. She always did, if anyone had bothered to listen. Serena looked at Connor with genuine gratitude. In all her preparation for this moment, she hadn't expected an ally. She hadn't expected someone to stand beside her not because they knew her success, but because they remembered her worth when she couldn't see it herself. Thank you, Connor. You're right. I do have something to say. She reached into her small evening bag and pulled out her phone. Over the past 2 months, I've been thinking about all of you, wondering how everyone turned out, curious about the paths we all took after graduation. She opened an app on her phone, the simple interface belying its significance. I discovered that Ashley is struggling with law school debt from a degree she's not using. Kevin has been searching for steady employment for 3 years. Brad has become a youth counselor, working with bullied children. Her voice softened as she looked at Brad in his wheelchair. Which is beautiful work, by the way. Brad's eyes filled with tears. How did you know all that? Because I care about what happened to everyone, even the people who hurt me. She scrolled through her phone. I also learned that Jana here has sold 30 million books under a pen name and has been secretly funding scholarships for underprivileged students at our old high school. Jana's face flushed. Serena, how did you? And Connor has been asking about me for years, telling colleagues that I was the smartest person in our class, defending quiet students because he remembered how I was treated. Connor stepped closer to her, his voice low. You really did change my life, you know. Not just with calculus. With perspective. The crowd was growing larger as other reunion attendees drifted over, drawn by the intensity of the conversation. Someone had turned off the music entirely. Tiffany, sensing her control of the situation slipping, raised her voice. This is all very touching, Serena, but what's your point? We all have struggles. We all have stories. What makes yours so special? Serena looked at Tiffany for a long moment, seeing not the cruel teenager who had tormented her, but a woman desperately trying to maintain her social position even at a high school reunion. There was something almost pitiful about it. My point, Tiffany, is that our assumptions about each other were wrong. All of us made judgments based on limited information, on surface appearances, on the roles we played in high school. She held up her phone again. For instance, everyone assumed I would fail because I was quiet, because I was different, because I didn't fit the mold of what success was supposed to look like at Westfield High. And did you prove us wrong? Tiffany's voice dripped with sarcasm. Are you going to tell us you're some kind of CEO now? That you're rich and famous and we should all be sorry? No, Tiffany. I'm not going to tell you I'm a CEO. Serena's thumb moved across her phone screen. I'm going to show you. She turned the phone around, displaying a news article from that morning. The headline read, Quantum Sync Technologies announces largest AI acquisition in history. Founder Serena Johnson's net worth rises to $350 billion. The ballroom went completely silent. Not the expectant silence of before, but the stunned silence of a group of people whose understanding of reality had just been fundamentally altered. Ashley was the first to speak, her voice barely a whisper. "That's you. You're Serena Johnson of Quantum Sync." "I am." Kevin's face had gone completely white. "The Serena Johnson? The one who's been on the cover of Forbes 12 times. 13, actually. This month's issue came out last week." Tiffany stared at the phone screen as if it might be a hallucination. "That's impossible. You were nobody. You were nothing. You were just the class dummy?" Serena finished gently. "Yes, I remember the term well. You used it often." The crowd was pressing closer now, phones appearing as people desperately tried to Google Serena Johnson Quantum Sync to verify what they were hearing. The search results were overwhelming. Magazine covers, congressional testimony footage, interviews with world leaders. The quiet girl from their high school had become one of the most powerful people on the planet. Connor was staring at her with something approaching awe. "My God, Serena. I knew you were brilliant, but this is what happens when you survive the worst and use it to fuel your best," she said, echoing her mother's words. But as she watched her classmates' reactions, she felt none of the satisfaction she'd expected. Ashley looked devastated, finally understanding who she'd been mocking on Facebook. Kevin appeared to be having trouble breathing. Even some of the kinder classmates seemed overwhelmed by the magnitude of the revelation. The only person who looked genuinely happy was Brad. From his wheelchair, he was applauding slowly. "Good for you, Serena. Really. Good for you." Tiffany, however, had recovered from her shock and was shifting into damage control mode. "Well, this is certainly a surprise," she said, forcing a bright smile. "How wonderful that one of our classmates has done so well. We should be proud to know you." The falseness in her voice was obvious to everyone, but what bothered Serena wasn't Tiffany's hypocrisy. It was the sudden shift in everyone's energy. People who had ignored her moments before were now pushing forward, trying to get closer, to associate themselves with her success. The same instinct that had made them cruel was now making them obsequious. "The thing is," Serena continued, her voice cutting through the whispers and phone notifications, "success isn't measured by net worth alone. Jana's books have touched millions of lives. Connor shapes young minds every day. Brad helps healing happen. Each of you has value that has nothing to do with money." She slipped her phone back into her bag. "I didn't come here tonight to humiliate anyone or to show off my wealth. I came because I wanted to understand something." "What?" Connor asked softly. "I wanted to understand why the opinions of people who never really knew me mattered so much that I spent 10 years proving them wrong." She looked around the circle of faces, some filled with regret, others with calculation, a few with genuine warmth. "And I think I finally understand." Jana stepped forward. "What do you understand?" "That they didn't matter then, and they don't matter now. The only opinions that matter are from people who see your worth when you're at your lowest, not just when you're at your highest." Her eyes found Connor's. "People who defend you when you can't defend yourself. People who remember your kindness when everyone else remembers your silence. People who believe in your intelligence when the world calls you stupid." Connor's face flushed, but he didn't look away. "So thank you, Connor, for reminding me tonight that I was never actually invisible. I was just surrounded by people who chose not to see me." She smiled, and it transformed her entire face. "But some people saw me clearly, even when I couldn't see myself." The crowd began to shift and murmur as the full impact of the revelation settled in. Serena Johnson, the girl they'd dismissed, the woman some had mocked just months ago on social media, was standing in their high school reunion as one of the most powerful people in the world. But more importantly to her, she was standing there no longer needing their approval to know her worth. The revelation rippled through the Riverside Country Club like a stone thrown into still water. Within minutes, the entire reunion knew. Serena Johnson, the quiet girl they barely remembered, was now worth more than most small countries' GDP. Conversations stopped mid-sentence as people pulled out phones, frantically searching for articles, photos, anything to confirm what seemed impossible. Is that really her on the cover of Time magazine? Look, here's a video of her testifying before Congress. She owns half of Silicon Valley. My cousin works for one of her companies. The whispers followed Serena as she moved through the ballroom, but now they carried a different energy. Where once there had been dismissal, now there was desperate calculation. Old classmates who hadn't spoken to her in a decade suddenly appeared at her elbow with forced smiles and childhood memories that sounded suspiciously fabricated. Serena! I was just telling my husband about that time in chemistry class when you helped me with my lab report, gushed Kelly Martinez, a girl who had never acknowledged Serena's existence in high school. I don't remember that, Serena replied politely. Oh, you were always so modest. Kelly's laugh was brittle. Listen, I'm in real estate now, and I have some amazing investment properties that might interest someone of your caliber. Before Serena could respond, Connor appeared beside her. Excuse me, Kelly, but I need to steal Serena for a moment. His hand touched Serena's elbow gently, guiding her away from the growing crowd of suddenly interested classmates. They found refuge on the country club's terrace, where the December air was crisp and clean. The noise from the ballroom became a distant hum behind the glass doors. Serena wrapped her arms around herself, and without a word, Connor shrugged off his suit jacket and draped it over her shoulders. Thank you, she said, inhaling the faint scent of his cologne mixed with chalk dust. Even 10 years later, he still smelled like a teacher. You looked like you needed rescuing in there. Connor leaned against the terrace railing beside her. I imagine this wasn't exactly how you planned the evening to go. Serena considered this. Actually, I'm not sure what I planned. For months, I thought I wanted revenge. I wanted to see their faces when they realized who they'd been mocking. I wanted them to feel small the way they made me feel small. And now I just feel tired. She looked out at the country club's manicured grounds, lit by discreet landscape lighting. Do you know what the strangest part is? I spent 10 years building an empire partly to prove them wrong, and tonight I realized they were never actually thinking about me at all. Connor was quiet for a moment. I was thinking about you. She turned to look at him. In the soft outdoor lighting, he looked exactly like the boy who used to sit 2 seats behind her in calculus, but with the confidence of a man who'd found his purpose. You said that earlier, about wondering what happened to me. I asked about you every time I ran into other classmates. I checked Facebook hoping you joined. I even tried to find you through the school's alumni office. He smiled ruefully. They told me they didn't have current contact information. Because I never updated it. I didn't want to be found. By everyone or by anyone. The question hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they should cross. Inside the ballroom, they could see Tiffany holding court at the bar, gesticulating wildly as she spoke to a cluster of classmates. Even from a distance, her body language screamed damage control. She's probably telling them we were always friends, Serena observed. Let her. The people who matter know the truth. Connor shifted closer to her on the railing. Can I ask you something? Of course. What was it like? Building all of this. Becoming who you are now. Serena considered how to answer. She'd given this response in countless interviews, But Connor's question felt different. More personal. Lonely, she said finally. Exhilarating and terrifying and lonely. Every success felt hollow because I had no one to share it with who really understood where I'd come from. What about your mother? Serena's expression softened and grew sad simultaneously. She died 3 years ago. Cancer. She got to see me succeed, but she never got to see me happy. Are you? Happy, I mean. I thought I was. I convinced myself that success was enough, that proving everyone wrong was a worthy life goal. She pulled his jacket tighter around her shoulders. But tonight, standing in there, watching people suddenly want to be my friend because of my bank account, I realized I'd been defining myself by their opinions for 10 years, just in the opposite direction. Connor nodded slowly. You built an empire to spite people who had forgotten you existed. Exactly. She laughed, but it wasn't bitter this time. It's absurd when you say it out loud. Not absurd. Human. We all carry our high school wounds longer than we should. What wounds do you carry? Connor was quiet for so long that Serena wondered if he'd heard her. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Cowardice. I saw what they did to you, and I said nothing. I was 17 and scared of being targeted myself, but that's not an excuse. I watched them tear you down day after day, and I chose my own social safety over doing what was right. Connor. No, let me finish. I've been carrying this guilt for 10 years. Every time I see a student being bullied, every time I step in to help, I think about you. I think about how I failed you when it mattered. Serena turned to face him fully. You didn't fail me. You were one of the few people who treated me like a human being. Treating you normally wasn't enough. I should have actively defended you. We were kids, Connor. Scared kids trying to survive high school. You survived it better than any of us. The terrace doors opened, and Jana Parker stepped outside, looking apologetic. Sorry to interrupt, but Serena, there are some people in there getting pretty aggressive about wanting to talk to you. I thought you might want a heads up. Through the glass doors, they could see a small crowd gathered near the terrace entrance, waiting. Aggressive how? Connor's voice carried a protective edge that made Serena's heart skip. Business cards, investment pitches, sob stories about needing loans. The usual vultures. Jana's expression was disgusted. It's like watching people transform into completely different human beings in real time. Serena sighed. I should probably go back in. Face the music. Or, Connor said quietly, you could leave. Run away. Choose yourself over their expectations. Again. The suggestion was tempting. Serena could call Miguel, slip out through the country club's service entrance, and be back in her penthouse within an hour. She could wake up tomorrow and pretend this entire evening had been a strange dream. But as she looked back through the glass doors at her former classmates, she saw something that stopped her. Brad Murphy was still sitting in his wheelchair near the back of the room, not trying to approach her, not angling for anything. Just watching with what looked like genuine pride. And there was something else. A few classmates who weren't part of the circling crowd. People who were keeping their distance, looking uncomfortable with the sudden desperation of their peers. Maybe they deserved better than her assumptions, too. I can't leave, she said finally. Not yet. Why? Because if I leave now, I'll spend the next 10 years wondering what would have happened if I'd stayed. I've wasted enough time living in the past. She straightened her shoulders, and Connor could see the CEO emerging. Besides, I didn't build a $350 billion company by running from difficult conversations. Jana grinned. There's the woman who revolutionized artificial intelligence. You two know each other? Connor looked between them, confused. "We had lunch last month," Jana explained. "When I found out Serena Johnson was my old high school classmate, I reached out through her publicist. Took 3 months to get a meeting." Serena looked surprised. "You never told me you remembered me from high school." "Because I was ashamed. I sat with you sometimes at lunch, but I never defended you either. I was too worried about my own social standing." Jana's voice was quiet. "I wrote my first novel about a girl who gets bullied at school. It was dedicated to S.J., who deserved better friends." The three of them stood in comfortable silence for a moment, each lost in their own memories and regrets. Finally, Serena took off Connor's jacket and handed it back to him. "Ready to face the wolves?" "Together?" Connor asked. "Together." As they walked back toward the terrace doors, Jana fell into step beside them. "You know, I think this might be the first high school reunion in history where the real story is just beginning." The ballroom had transformed in their absence. What had been a typical reunion atmosphere of nostalgia and small talk had become something closer to a corporate networking event. Classmates clutched business cards and wore the desperate smiles of people trying to capitalize on an unexpected opportunity. The DJ had given up trying to maintain any semblance of party atmosphere and was simply playing background music while conversations dominated the space. Serena, Connor, and Jana entered together, and the shift in energy was immediate. The crowd near the terrace doors parted like they were royalty, but the hungry looks in their eyes made Serena's skin crawl. "Serena!" Ashley Rodriguez materialized beside them, her earlier discomfort replaced by calculated enthusiasm. "I was just telling everyone about that time you helped me with my chemistry homework. You were always so generous with your time." "That never happened," Serena said calmly. Ashley's smile faltered for just a moment before snapping back into place. "Oh, you're being modest again. Listen, I'm working in pharmaceutical sales now, and I have some incredible opportunities that—" "Ashley," Connor interrupted, his teacher voice carrying authority that made her stop mid-pitch. "Give her some space." "I'm sorry, who are you two?" Ashley began, then recognition dawned. "Oh, Connor Walsh. Still just a teacher, I see." The dismissal in her voice was automatic, the same social hierarchy reflexes that had governed their high school years. But Connor didn't flinch. "Still just a teacher," he agreed. "Still just someone who believes in treating people with respect regardless of their net worth." Serena felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. Here was someone who wasn't trying to change for her, who wasn't suddenly discovering her value now that her bank account was public knowledge. "Excuse us," Jana said firmly, linking arms with Serena and steering her away from Ashley. Connor followed, creating a protective triangle around Serena as they moved through the crowd. They found refuge at a high-top table in the corner of the ballroom, far enough from the main crowd to have a conversation without constant interruption. The table was near the memory wall, lined with blown-up photos from their high school years. Serena found herself staring at a picture from the senior class picnic. She was visible in the background, sitting alone under a tree with a book while everyone else played volleyball. "I remember that day," Connor said, following her gaze. "You were reading something thick. Philosophy, I think." "Nietzsche," Serena confirmed. "Beyond good and evil. I thought it made me sound intellectual." "Did you understand it?" "Not really. But it was better company than most people." Jana laughed softly. "I used to watch you reading and wonder what you were thinking about. You looked so absorbed, so content in your own world." "I was building escape plans," Serena admitted. "Every book was research for a life somewhere else." Connor signaled the bartender, who hurried over with obvious deference now that he knew who Serena was. "What can I get for you folks?" "3 glasses of your best wine," Connor said, then caught Serena's questioning look. Unless you don't drink? I drink. Just not usually at high school reunions with people I haven't seen in a decade. Well, this isn't exactly a typical reunion anymore, Jana pointed out. While they waited for their drinks, Serena noticed Brad Murphy wheeling his chair toward their table. The crowd parted for him, but unlike with her, it was out of sympathy rather than opportunism. Mind if I join you? Brad asked when he reached them. His voice was different from the confident jock she remembered. Quieter, humbler. Serena studied his face, looking for traces of the boy who had made her life miserable. She found them, but they were overlaid with something else. Pain, maybe. Experience. Of course, she said, surprising herself. Brad positioned his wheelchair at their table and accepted a beer from Connor without being asked. For a moment, they all sat in awkward silence. I owe you more than an apology, Brad said finally, looking directly at Serena. I owe you an explanation. You don't owe me anything. I do. Because what I did to you wasn't about you at all. It was about me trying to feel powerful when everything else in my life felt out of control. He took a sip of his beer, gathering courage. My dad was drinking heavily back then. Lost his job when I was a sophomore. My parents fought constantly. I was terrified we'd lose the house. Serena felt Connor tense beside her, but she kept her expression neutral. I'm not making excuses, Brad continued. But when I came to school and saw someone I could pick on, someone who wouldn't fight back, it made me feel strong. Like I had control over something. His voice cracked. It was cowardly and cruel, and I've regretted it every day since. What changed? Jana asked gently. Brad gestured to his legs. Car accident. Junior year of college. Drunk driver hit me head-on. I was in the hospital for 6 months, and I had a lot of time to think about the kind of person I'd been. He looked back at Serena. I kept thinking about you, about how you faced every day knowing people were going to be cruel to you, and you just endured. That takes real strength. The kind I never had. Serena felt something shift inside her chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. What do you do now? I counsel kids who are being bullied, and sometimes the kids doing the bullying. Turns out most of the time, they're both hurting. Connor leaned forward. That must be difficult work. It is. But it's the only work that makes sense after what I've done. Brad turned back to Serena. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that you changed my life, even if I was too stupid to realize it at the time. The conversation was interrupted by a commotion near the dance floor. Tiffany was speaking loudly to a group of classmates, her voice carrying across the room. I always knew Serena had potential, she was saying. We were actually quite close in high school. I was always encouraging her to speak up more in class. Jana snorted. Unbelievable. She's rewriting history in real time, Connor observed. But Serena was studying Tiffany with the analytical eye she'd developed in business. She saw the desperation beneath the performance, the way Tiffany's husband stood slightly apart from the group with an expression of obvious embarrassment, the forced quality of her laughter. She's scared, Serena realized. Scared of what? Brad asked. Of being irrelevant. She built her identity around being the most successful person from our class, and now she's not even close. Serena took a sip of her wine. It's actually kind of sad. As if summoned by their conversation, Tiffany appeared at their table, her smile bright and brittle as glass. Serena, I've been looking everywhere for you. I wanted to discuss some exciting opportunities. She glanced dismissively at the others. Perhaps we could talk privately? Actually, I'm enjoying this conversation, Serena replied. Brad was just telling us about his work with bullied children. Tiffany's smile flickered. How nice. She clearly couldn't understand why Serena would choose to sit with Brad Murphy, who was now nobody important, instead of networking with people who might be useful. You know, Tiffany continued, I've been thinking about our high school years, and I realize I may have misjudged some of your potential. I'd love to make up for that now. The words hung in the air like a challenge. This was the moment Serena had fantasized about for years. Tiffany Blake Morrison, perfect and cruel, essentially begging for her attention. But as she looked at Tiffany's desperate expression, Serena felt no satisfaction. Only pity. Tiffany, she said quietly, you didn't misjudge my potential. You chose to be cruel to someone who couldn't fight back. There's a difference. Tiffany's composure cracked slightly. Everyone makes mistakes in high school. Some people make mistakes, Connor interjected. Others make choices. And some people, Brad added quietly, spend the rest of their lives trying to make up for those choices. The weight of his words settled over the table. Tiffany looked between them, realizing she'd lost control of the narrative she was trying to build. Well, she said, her voice tight, I can see you're all very philosophical tonight. Enjoy your little reunion within the reunion. She turned and walked away, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. That was brutal, Jana observed. That was honest, Serena corrected. She looked around the table at these three people who had, in different ways, seen her clearly. You know what's strange? I spent 10 years afraid to face any of you, and now I can't remember why. Maybe because we're all different people now, Connor suggested. Or maybe, Brad said, we're finally becoming the people we were supposed to be all along. The moment of peace shattered like glass hitting concrete. Serena's phone buzzed insistently against the table, the sound cutting through their conversation. She glanced at the screen and her face went pale. Excuse me, I need to take this. She stepped away from the table, pressing the phone to her ear. What do you mean leaked? Connor watched her posture change, the relaxed woman for moments before transforming back into the steel-spined CEO. Her voice dropped to the controlled whisper of someone delivering bad news in public. How long ago? Who has it? A pause. Every major outlet? Jesus. Jana caught Connor's concerned look. Something's wrong. Through the ballroom's large windows, they could see photographers gathering outside. Not the casual reunion photographer they'd hired, but professional paparazzi with long lenses and expensive equipment. Serena returned to the table, her face a mask of controlled fury. We have a problem. What kind of problem? Connor asked. Someone at this reunion has been recording our conversations and selling them to the press. She held up her phone, showing a gossip website headline, Tech Billionaire's High School Revenge, exclusive audio from reunion confrontation. Brad leaned forward to read the screen. They recorded us? Not just us. Everything. My revelation about my net worth, my conversation with Tiffany, even our discussion on the terrace about my mother's death. Serena's hands trembled with rage. It's all over social media. Jana grabbed her own phone, scrolling quickly. Twitter's exploding. There's hashtags. Oh God, Serena, they're making memes out of Tiffany's reaction. Connor's face darkened. Someone we trusted did this. The question is who, Serena said, scanning the ballroom with new eyes. Everyone looked suspicious now. The classmate taking selfies near their table. The person who'd been lingering by the memory wall. Even the bartender who'd overheard their drink orders. Her phone rang again. This time it was her head of security. Ms. Johnson, we have a situation. The press has your location. TMZ, CNN, local news crews. They're setting up outside the country club. You need to leave now. How many? Dozens. And growing. Someone's been feeding them information in real time. Serena closed her eyes, feeling the familiar weight of being watched, judged, analyzed that came with her level of success. Except this time it was personal. This time they had her raw emotions, her private pain, her mother's memory. Serena. Connor's voice was gentle. What can we do? Before she could answer, Kevin Torres appeared at their table, his phone held up like a weapon. His face was flushed with alcohol and something uglier. Still think you're better than us? Kevin's words slurred together, but his intent was clear. Still think your money makes you special? Kevin, you're drunk, Jana said firmly. Go home. No, I'm tired of pretending. Tired of watching everyone kiss up to her because she got rich. Kevin's voice was rising, drawing attention from nearby tables. You want to know the truth? I've been recording everything tonight. Every word, every tear, every pathetic attempt at forgiveness. The table went silent. Connor stood up slowly, his teacher instincts recognizing a dangerous situation. You. Serena's voice was barely a whisper. Me. And I'm not sorry. Kevin swayed slightly, emboldened by liquid courage. You waltz in here acting like some wounded victim, like you're better than us because you survived high school. Well, guess what? We all survived high school. We all had problems. The difference is we didn't turn into cold, calculating bitches who buy companies just to prove a point. Kevin, that's enough, Brad said sharply. Oh, look who's defending her now. The cripple thinks he can be her knight in shining armor. Kevin's cruelty was indiscriminate now, lashing out at everyone. You really think she cares about your sob story? You think she gives a damn about your wheelchair guilt? Brad's face went ashen, but Connor moved before anyone else could react. He stepped between Kevin and their table, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd broken up countless teenage fights. You're done. Security is already on their way, and you're going to leave. Now. Security. Kevin laughed nastily. You mean her security? Her bodyguards? Yeah, I know all about them. Been watching them all night. Bet they cost more than I make in a year. That's when Serena understood the full scope of Kevin's betrayal. He hadn't just recorded their conversations. He'd been watching, analyzing, cataloging every detail of her life for hours. How long have you been planning this? She asked. Since the Facebook group. Since I saw you were coming and realized we were about to get a front row seat to the Serena Johnson show. His smile was vicious. You think you're the only one who can do research? You think you're the only one who can plan? The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Kevin's unemployment that she'd discovered in her background check. His mounting desperation. His need for money that a gossip exclusive could provide. You sold my pain, she said quietly. I sold the truth. That you're still the same pathetic girl you always were, just with better clothes and a bigger bank account. Connor moved closer to Kevin, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Walk away. Right now. Before I forget I'm supposed to be a role model. But Kevin was past reason. Or what? You'll fight me? The noble teacher defending his billionaire girlfriend? That'll make great footage too. He held up his phone again, still recording, waiting for Connor to lose control and give him more content to sell. Instead, Serena stood up. You're right, Kevin. Her voice was steady now, the initial shock replaced by something harder. I am still the same girl I was in high school. Still careful. Still observant. Still thinking 3 steps ahead. She pulled out her own phone and showed him the screen. A recording app had been running. I started recording the moment you admitted to selling our private conversations to the press. California is a two-party consent state for recording, but given that you've been illegally recording all of us tonight, I think we're past worrying about consent laws. Kevin's face went white. You can't do that. I can and I am. You see, Kevin, you made one crucial mistake. You assumed I was here as a victim seeking revenge. But I'm not a victim anymore. I'm a woman who owns 3 law firms and has senators on speed dial. She gestured toward the ballroom entrance, where 2 serious-looking men in dark suits had appeared. You're about to be arrested for invasion of privacy, illegal recording, and selling stolen private conversations. But here's the thing. If you delete everything you recorded tonight and issue a public apology to everyone you've hurt with this stunt, I might be willing to settle this quietly. Kevin looked between Serena's calm face and the approaching security, his bravado crumbling. You wouldn't. Try me. The security team reached their table just as Kevin's phone slipped from his shaking hands, clattering to the floor. The recording app was still running, capturing his fear in high definition. Ma'am, we're here to escort Mr. Torres from the premises, the lead security officer said to Serena. Actually, Connor said, his voice carrying a strange note, before you do that, there's something else we need to discuss. Serena looked at him in confusion, but Connor's expression had changed. The warmth from earlier was gone, replaced by something she couldn't read. Connor, I need to tell you something, Serena. Something I should have told you earlier. He looked at the security guards, at Kevin being restrained, at the chaos Kevin's betrayal had created. I didn't just randomly run into you tonight. I knew you were coming. The words hit her like a physical blow. What? I've known who you became for 2 years. I've been following your career, your company, your success. When I heard you might attend the reunion, I made sure I'd be here. Serena felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. You've known this whole time? Not about your net worth. That was a surprise to everyone. But I knew you were successful. I knew you were Serena Johnson of Quantum Sync Technologies. And you didn't think to mention this? Connor's face was filled with regret, but he pressed on. I wanted to tell you. I tried to find the right moment, but then everything happened so fast, and you seemed so happy to reconnect naturally, and You lied to me. Her voice was flat, emotionless. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you the whole truth. For 2 years, you've known where to find me, and you never reached out. But the moment there's a reunion, the moment there's a chance for publicity, suddenly you're interested. It's not like that. But Serena was no longer listening. Kevin's betrayal had wounded her, but Connor's deception felt like something vital breaking inside her chest. The one person she'd begun to trust, the one person who'd seemed to care about her before knowing her worth, had been playing a role all along. She looked around the table at Jana, at Brad, wondering who else had hidden agendas. Wondering if any of this had been real. I need to leave, she said quietly. Serena, please, let me explain. But she was already walking away, her security detail flanking her, leaving behind the wreckage of the evening and the breaking point that had shattered everything she'd begun to believe in. The Tesla moved through the December night like a ghost, its silence amplifying every thought racing through Serena's mind. Miguel had stopped trying to make conversation after her third monosyllabic response. In the rearview mirror, the Riverside Country Club faded into distant lights, but the weight of the evening pressed against her chest like a stone. Her phone buzzed incessantly. Text messages, missed calls, email notifications flooding in faster than she could process them. The story was spreading like wildfire across social media platforms. She turned the phone face down and stared out at the highway. Ma'am, where to? Miguel finally asked as they approached the turnoff to her penthouse. I don't know. For the first time in a decade, Serena Johnson didn't have a plan. They drove in silence until she spotted a 24-hour diner off the highway, its neon sign flickering against the dark sky. "There," she said suddenly. "Pull over there." Miguel looked surprised but complied, parking the Tesla between a rusted pickup truck and a Honda with a cracked windshield. The contrast wasn't lost on either of them. "You want me to come in with you?" "No. Just wait here." The diner smelled like coffee and bacon grease, populated by night shift workers and insomniacs seeking refuge from their thoughts. Serena chose a corner booth where she could see the door and ordered black coffee from a waitress who looked too tired to recognize her from any magazine covers. She sat there for an hour, watching the coffee grow cold while her phone vibrated against the table. Finally, she picked it up and began reading. The headlines were brutal. Billionaire's high school revenge plot exposed, from class dummy to tech mogul. The secret recording, Serena Johnson's billion-dollar breakdown. But it wasn't the headlines that cut deepest. It was the comments. Thousands of them, dissecting every word she'd spoken, every emotion she'd shown. Her pain had become entertainment. Her mother's memory was being used for clickbait. The vulnerable moments she'd shared with Connor on the terrace were being analyzed by strangers who would never understand their weight. A new text message appeared on her screen. "Jana, Serena, I'm so sorry about Kevin and Connor. Please don't let their actions poison what happened tonight. Some of it was real. Then Brad, you showed me what strength looks like. That hasn't changed because of what others did. And finally, Connor, I know I have no right to ask, but please let me explain. It's not what you think." Serena stared at Connor's message for a long time. Part of her wanted to call him, to hear his explanation, to find out if any part of their connection had been genuine. But a larger part of her, the part that had survived 17 years of feeling worthless, whispered that she already knew the truth. People saw her success first and her humanity second. Even the people who claimed to care. Her phone rang. Rebecca, her assistant, calling from the office despite the late hour. "Ms. Johnson, I'm so sorry to bother you, but the situation is escalating. We've had media requests from every major network. Your board is concerned about the PR implications. Legal wants to discuss options for the recorded conversations." "Handle it," Serena said automatically. "Ma'am, they need specifics. Do you want to issue a statement? Pursue charges against the person who recorded you? Schedule interviews to control the narrative." Serena looked around the diner at the tired faces of people living quiet lives without cameras or commentary. A truck driver hunched over coffee and a crossword puzzle. A nurse still in scrubs grabbing dinner after a long shift. Normal people dealing with normal problems. "Cancel my meetings for next week." All of them. Even the Google merger. All of them. "Ms. Johnson, are you all right?" The question hung in the air. Was she all right? She was worth $350 billion. Owned companies across 3 continents, had senators on speed dial, and could buy most small countries. But sitting in a highway diner at midnight, she felt as lost as she had at 17. "I'll call you tomorrow." After hanging up, she sat in the fluorescent-lit silence and forced herself to confront the question that had been haunting her all evening. What did she want? Not what did she want to prove, or who did she want to impress, or how did she want to be seen? What did she actually want? The answer surprised her with its simplicity. She wanted to matter to someone who saw her clearly. Not her net worth, not her success story, not her inspiring rise from bullied teenager to tech mogul. Just her. Serena. The woman who still felt 17 sometimes. The woman who missed her mother every day. The woman who had spent 10 years building walls so high she'd forgotten how to let anyone climb them. Her phone buzzed with another message from Connor. "I know I destroyed your trust, but I need you to know why I never reached out before tonight. I was afraid you'd think I wanted something from you. Your success. Your connections. Your money. I've watched you from a distance for 2 years, proud of everything you accomplished, but terrified that if I contacted you, you'd assume I had ulterior motives. Tonight was supposed to be different because it was neutral territory. Old classmates reuniting. I thought maybe we could start fresh, and I could tell you later that I'd known about your success all along. I was wrong. I was a coward then, and I was a coward tonight. Serena read the message 3 times. There was something in his words that rang true, something that aligned with the Connor she remembered from calculus class. The boy who solved problems quietly, methodically, without seeking attention or credit. Her coffee had gone completely cold. She ordered another cup and opened her laptop, connecting to the diner's Wi-Fi. The internet was ablaze with the story of her reunion. Videos, photos, analysis pieces about her body language during the confrontation with Tiffany. But buried in the noise, she found something unexpected. A blog post from Brad Murphy, published just 2 hours ago. Tonight I attended my high school reunion and had the privilege of apologizing to someone I wronged deeply as a teenager. Serena Johnson handled my confession with grace I didn't deserve. She listened when she could have walked away. She accepted my explanation without requiring my humiliation. The woman the media is portraying as vengeful and calculating showed me more compassion in 10 minutes than I showed her in 4 years of high school. Someone violated her privacy tonight by recording personal conversations and selling them for profit. That person doesn't represent our class or our community. Serena Johnson is a remarkable woman who has earned every bit of her success, and she deserves better than having her private pain turned into public entertainment. The post had already been shared hundreds of times. Comments poured in, not from gossip seekers, but from people sharing their own stories of overcoming bullying, of surviving high school trauma, of finding strength in the aftermath of cruelty. Serena felt something shift inside her chest. Not the breaking feeling from earlier, but something else. Recognition, maybe, that her story, even twisted and exploited, was resonating with people who understood what it meant to be seen as less than you were. Another message appeared on her screen. This one from Jana. I just published a Twitter thread about what really happened tonight. The parts Kevin's recordings didn't capture. The kindness you showed Brad. The way you refused to humiliate Tiffany even when you had every reason to. The way you built connections instead of burning bridges. People need to know who you really are. Serena clicked the link Jana had included. The thread was already viral, with thousands of retweets and replies. Jana had written about the reunion from a novelist's perspective, painting Serena not as a vengeful billionaire, but as a woman who had transformed pain into purpose, who had chosen growth over bitterness. The waitress refilled her coffee again, studying Serena's face with the knowing look of someone who'd seen plenty of people working through difficult decisions in the small hours of the night. Rough evening, she asked. You could say that. Well, honey, whatever it is, the sun's still gonna come up tomorrow. Question is whether you're gonna meet it the same person you were yesterday or somebody different. The simple wisdom hit Serena like a revelation. She had a choice to make. She could retreat back into the safety of her penthouse, surrounded by lawyers and PR specialists and carefully controlled narratives. She could let Kevin's betrayal and Connor's deception confirm her worst fears about human nature. She could build higher walls and trust fewer people and live the rest of her life proving points to people whose opinions didn't matter. Or she could choose something else entirely. She pulled out her phone and began typing a message to Connor. I'll listen to your explanation. But not here, not like this. Come to my office Monday at 9 a.m. Come alone. Come honest. Then she called Miguel and asked him to take her home. Not to hide, but to prepare for what came next. Monday morning arrived with the crisp clarity that December in San Francisco sometimes offered as a gift. Serena stood at her office window 38 floors above the city, watching the sun burn through the marine layer. She'd spent the weekend in careful preparation, not for a business meeting, but for something far more important. Her assistant Rebecca had been bewildered by the instructions. Clear the entire morning. No security beyond building standard. No recording devices. No witnesses. Just two people and the truth between them. At exactly 9 a.m., her receptionist called. "Ms. Johnson, Connor Walsh is here to see you." "Send him in." Connor entered her office carrying a manila folder and the weight of 2 years of unspoken truth. He looked smaller somehow in the vast space of her executive suite, but his eyes held the same steady intelligence she remembered from calculus class. "Thank you for seeing me," he said, stopping in front of her desk. "Sit." "It wasn't a request." He took the chair across from her, placing the folder on his lap. For a moment, they simply looked at each other across the expanse of polished wood and accumulated success. "You said you wanted honesty," Connor began. "So here it is. I've been a coward twice. Once in high school when I watched them tear you down and said nothing. And again 2 years ago when I discovered who you'd become and was too afraid to reach out." Serena remained silent, letting him speak. "I found out by accident. A student was doing a research project on successful women in STEM, and she showed me an article about QuantumSync's founder. There was a photo, and even though you looked different, older, confident, I knew it was you immediately." He opened the folder and pulled out a printed article. This one. Serena recognized it. A Forbes piece from 2018 about her company's breakthrough in quantum computing. She looked younger in the photo, less guarded. "I stared at that picture for an hour," Connor continued. "You looked so poised, so sure of yourself. Everything I'd hoped you'd become. And I wanted to call you, to email you, to find some way to reconnect. But every time I tried to compose a message, the same thought stopped me." "What thought?" "That you'd think I wanted something from you. That I was another person trying to capitalize on your success. That I was no different from all the people who ignored you in high school but would suddenly be interested now that you were famous and wealthy." He pulled out another paper from the folder. "So instead, I did something else. I started following your career from a distance. Not in a creepy way," he added quickly. "Just professionally. I read your interviews, watched your congressional testimony, followed QuantumSync's innovations. I was proud of you, Serena. Proud and amazed and not at all surprised." The second paper was a printout of an email. Connor handed it to her. "This is a message I wrote to you last year but never sent." Serena read it silently. The email was 3 paragraphs long, carefully crafted but genuine. Connor wrote about seeing her success, about his regret over high school, about wanting to reconnect but fearing his motives would be misunderstood. The final line read, "I hope you're not just successful, but happy. You deserve both. When I heard about the reunion, I thought it might be my chance. Neutral territory. A reason to reconnect that wasn't about your success or my regrets. I thought if I could talk to you naturally, as classmates catching up, maybe later I could tell you that I'd known about your achievements all along and had been cheering for you from afar." Serena set the email down carefully. "But you let me believe our reunion was completely spontaneous." "I did. And that was wrong. I was so afraid of being lumped in with people who only wanted to know you because of your success that I overcorrected. I hid the fact that your success was part of what motivated me to be there." "Part of what motivated you?" Connor leaned forward, his voice growing more intense. "The other part was that I never stopped thinking about the girl who tutored me in calculus. Not Serena Johnson, the CEO. Serena, The 17-year-old who was brilliant and kind and stronger than any of us realized. I've compared every woman I've dated to her for 10 years. Something shifted in Serena's chest, but she kept her expression neutral. That's a lot of pressure to put on a memory. It is. And it's not fair to you or to anyone else. But it's the truth. He pulled out one final paper from the folder. This is also true. The last document was a resignation letter addressed to Westfield High School, dated the previous Friday. You quit your job? I submitted my resignation the morning after the reunion. Not because of what happened to you, but because of what I realized about myself. I've been hiding behind noble intentions while being fundamentally dishonest about my motivations. That's not the kind of teacher I want to be. Serena stared at the resignation letter. Connor, you love teaching. I do. And I'll teach again, somewhere else, when I figure out how to be the person I should have been all along. He met her eyes directly. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for a second chance. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that when I defended you at the reunion, when I stood beside you against Tiffany and Kevin, that was real. My feelings weren't calculated or strategic or influenced by your net worth. They were just me, finally being the person I should have been in high school. The office fell silent except for the distant hum of the city below. Serena walked to her window, looking out at the world she'd conquered while carrying the wounds from the world she'd left behind. Do you know what the hardest part of success has been? She asked without turning around. What? Never knowing if people see me or just see what I've built. Never being certain if connection is real or transactional. She turned to face him. You think you were protecting me by hiding your knowledge of my success, but what you were really doing was taking away my choice. My agency to decide whether your interest was genuine. Connor's face fell. I know. I realized that too late. But there's something else you should know. Serena returned to her desk but didn't sit down. I had you investigated before the reunion. I knew about your teaching career, your search for me, your comments to colleagues about me being the smartest person in our class. His eyes widened in surprise. I also knew you'd quit your job. My security team is very thorough. She allowed herself a small smile. So while you were trying to protect me from feeling manipulated, I already knew more about your life than you realized. I don't understand. I'm saying that your fear of being seen as opportunistic was groundless. I would have known your motives were genuine because I do my research on everyone who matters to me. The word matters hung between them, heavy with possibility. Do I matter to you? Connor asked quietly. Serena was silent for a long moment, weighing her words carefully. For 10 years, I've built walls to protect myself from exactly the kind of betrayal Kevin Torres showed me Friday night. But I've also built walls to protect myself from people who might actually care about me, because caring makes you vulnerable, and vulnerable people get hurt. She moved around her desk, closing some of the distance between them. You made a mistake, Connor. You let fear guide your choices instead of honesty. But your mistake came from wanting to protect me, not exploit me. And the way you stood up for me at the reunion, the way you've spent 2 years being proud of my success from a distance, the way you quit your job because you realized you hadn't been living up to your own standards. Those things tell me who you really are. Connor stood slowly, hope and fear warring in his expression. I'm not the same person I was in high school, Serena continued. I'm stronger now, but I'm also more careful. If you want a chance with me, a real chance, it has to be built on complete honesty. No more protecting me from difficult truths. No more making decisions about what I can or can't handle. What are you saying? I'm saying that the girl who used to tutor you in calculus would like to get to know the man you've become. Not as former classmates with shared trauma, not as a success story and her admirer, but as two adults who see each other clearly. Connor's smile was tentative but genuine. "I'd like that too." "Good. Because I have a proposition for you." She walked to her desk and pulled out a business card. "There's a position open at the Quantum Sync Foundation. We fund educational initiatives focused on supporting students who don't fit traditional molds. Students like I was. The job would involve developing curricula, training teachers, maybe even some direct instruction." Connor took the card, studying it carefully. "Serena, I can't accept this because we're. You can accept it because you're qualified. I've seen your teaching philosophy, your student evaluations, your innovative approaches to helping struggling learners. You're exactly what the foundation needs." She met his eyes steadily. "What we do with our personal relationship is separate from your professional qualifications." "And what do we do with our personal relationship?" Serena considered the question, thinking about the 17-year-old girl who'd sat alone at lunch, the woman who'd built an empire on determination and brilliance, and the person she was still becoming. "We start with dinner," she said finally. "Somewhere quiet, away from cameras and crowds and high school memories. Somewhere we can just be Serena and Connor, figuring out if we actually like each other as adults." Connor's smile was radiant now, transforming his entire face. "I'd like that very much." As he prepared to leave, Serena called after him. "Connor." "Yes." "The job interview is Thursday at 2 p.m. Don't be late." "I won't be." After he left, Serena stood at her window again, but this time she wasn't looking at what she'd built. She was looking toward what might come next. For the first time in years, the future felt less like a business plan and more like a story still being written. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jana. "Coffee later? I want to hear how it went." And another from Brad. "Hope today brought you some peace." Serena smiled, realizing she'd found something she hadn't known she was looking for. Not just love, though that was beginning to feel possible, but community, connection. The understanding that success wasn't just about what you achieved alone, but about the people who stood with you when achievement wasn't enough. Outside her window, San Francisco sparkled in the morning sun, and for once, Serena Johnson felt like she was exactly where she belonged. The Quantum Sync Foundation's inaugural gala was everything Serena had envisioned and nothing like she'd expected. The San Francisco Museum of Modern Art buzzed with conversations about education reform, technological innovation, and second chances. But what surprised her most was how natural it felt to have Connor beside her, not as her date trying to navigate her world, but as her partner who had built something meaningful alongside her. "The Martinez Scholarship recipient wants to meet you," Connor said, approaching with a 17-year-old girl whose nervous energy reminded Serena achingly of herself at that age. "Ms. Johnson," the girl said, her voice steady despite obvious nerves, "I wanted to thank you. Not just for the scholarship, but for showing me that being different isn't the same as being wrong." Serena smiled, remembering her mother's words about education being the way out. "What are you planning to study?" "Quantum physics. Mr. Walsh says I have an intuitive understanding of probability theory that most graduate students don't develop." After the girl left to rejoin her family, Connor touched Serena's arm gently. "3 more scholarship recipients want to meet you, but I told them they'd have to wait. There's someone else here who's been asking for you." Serena followed his gaze across the crowded room to where Brad Murphy sat in his wheelchair, dressed in a sharp navy suit, deep in conversation with Jana Parker. Both looked up as she approached, their faces lighting up with genuine warmth. "Look at you," Jana said, gesturing around the elegant space filled with educators, students, and philanthropists. 6 months ago, you were hiding from high school memories, and now you're changing the entire landscape of educational support. "We're changing it," Serena corrected, gesturing to Connor. "I just write the checks." Brad laughed. Right. And I just counsel a few kids. He looked around the gala with obvious pride. Serena, do you know that applications to become Quantum Sync Foundation mentors increased by 400% after that interview you did on 60 Minutes? The interview. Serena had initially resisted her publicist's suggestion to address the reunion scandal directly, but Connor had convinced her that her story could help others. The segment had focused not on the drama, but on her journey from isolation to connection, from proving points to building bridges. Speaking of media attention, Jana said with a mischievous grin, have you seen Tiffany's LinkedIn lately? Serena shook her head. After the reunion, she'd made a conscious decision to stop tracking her former classmates' reactions to her success. She's rebranded herself as a diversity and inclusion consultant, Jana continued, apparently inspired by reconnecting with old friends who showed her the importance of supporting underrepresented voices. Connor raised an eyebrow. She's monetizing your story? She's learning from it, Brad said quietly. I've been in touch with her. The whole reunion thing was a wake-up call. She's actually doing legitimate work now, helping companies create inclusive cultures. Sometimes it takes public embarrassment to force real change. And Kevin? Serena asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. Settled out of court, Jana replied. Agreed to delete everything, issued a public apology, and is doing community service teaching digital literacy to seniors. Your lawyers were thorough. Serena nodded. She'd insisted on the community service component rather than financial penalties. Kevin's desperation had made him cruel, but punishment without growth was just revenge. What about his job situation? Connor asked. Actually, Brad smiled. He's been volunteering with my program. Turns out he's good with the kids who act out because of family stress. He understands that particular kind of pain. The conversation was interrupted by Rebecca, Serena's assistant, who approached with tablet in hand. Ms. Johnson, the board meeting moved up your presentation. They're ready for the quarterly foundation report. As Serena prepared to address the Quantum Sync board about the foundation's first 6 months, she reflected on how much had changed. The initial media storm following the reunion had actually strengthened her position. Her willingness to be vulnerable, to address her past honestly, had humanized her in ways that traditional PR never could. The company's stock had reached new highs, partly driven by positive coverage of the foundation's work. Ready? Connor asked, straightening his tie. As the foundation's director of educational development, he'd be presenting alongside her. Ready? As they walked toward the boardroom, Jana called after them. Dinner tomorrow? My place. I'm making that pasta you love. We'll be there, Serena called back, then caught Connor's surprised look. What? I love that you said we. Get used to it. The boardroom presentation went perfectly. As they wrapped up, the board chair made an unexpected announcement. Given the Foundation's remarkable success and the positive impact on Quantum Sync's reputation, we're proposing to double the Foundation's budget for next year. Walking out of the building an hour later, Serena and Connor found themselves on the same street corner where her Tesla had been parked that night 6 months ago, when she'd fled the reunion in devastation. Regrets? Connor asked, following her gaze. Serena considered the question. 6 months ago, she'd been the loneliest successful person in Silicon Valley. Now she had work that mattered, friendships that had been tested and proven genuine, and love that saw her completely. Just one, she said finally. What's that? I wish my mother could have met you. Connor took her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. I think she would have liked seeing you this happy. As they walked toward their car, Serena's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Ms. Johnson, I'm a high school senior in Detroit. I saw your 60 Minutes interview and wanted to thank you for showing me that being the quiet kid doesn't mean being the invisible kid. I'm applying for your foundation scholarship. Whether I get it or not, you've already changed my life." Serena showed Connor the message, and they stood on the sidewalk reading it together as the San Francisco evening painted the sky in shades of gold and possibility. "Ready to go home?" Connor asked. Home. 6 months ago, home had been a penthouse fortress designed to keep the world out. Now it was the Victorian house they'd bought in No Valley, with a garden Connor was teaching her to tend and space for the life they were building together. "Ready," she said, and meant it completely. "Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this incredible journey. If this story touched your heart, wait until you see what's coming next. It's even more powerful and inspiring than you can imagine. So don't go anywhere." Click on that video showing on your screen right now to dive into another amazing story that will absolutely blow your mind. Trust me, you won't regret it.